Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested, and today I want to talk about the state of PC VR gaming headsets as they stand, and as I'm recording this at the end of 2025. It was about 2 years ago, back in late 2023, that I shot a video that was very similar to this, talking about the options at that time. In that video, I reviewed and compared the first Bigscreen Beyond with the Pimax Crystal, and talk about how those two manufacturers chose two different sets of priorities and hardware sets that were completely different from each other to service the PC gaming market. And since then, there have been many more options released into the marketplace. We have a bunch of new Pimax headsets. We have new headsets that make use of micro OLED panels like the Mega Nex and Play for Dream MR. We have the Apple Vision Pro that came out. We have the Quest 3 and the 3S that came out since then. And also this past week, we had the Samsung Galaxy S XR also come out. So there are a lot of headsets, virtual reality headsets available, but I wouldn't call most of those PC VR headsets. PC VR is still a small subset of the virtual reality and mixed reality headset space. I mean, you can look at something like the Quest 3S, I wouldn't call this a PC VR headset. Yes, you can play PC VR games on it, and at its price, it's a great way to do so with the Steam Link, with the cable, wirelessly. But this is a mobile VR headset. It's made mostly to run games and applications on the SoC, on the headset here, and then you can stream other games as an option. Same with the Apple Vision Pro. This is more of a mixed reality, spatial computer, as Apple will call it. And same with the Samsung Galaxy XR. It's mostly made for productivity, for media viewing, in Apple Vision's Pro case, for using the Mac Virtual Display. And yes, you can use the PlayStation VR2 Sense controllers and ALVR to stream your PC VR games onto this, but that's not what this is designed for, and it's not what it's best at. When I'm talking about PC VR headsets, I'm talking about things like these headsets here. And we've kind of come full circle because I'm once again sitting next to a Bigscreen Beyond. In this case, it's the Bigscreen Beyond 2 that came out earlier this year, as well as the Somnium VR1 that came out last year. I've been using both these headsets as PC VR headsets wired to a high-end gaming computer, going back and forth between them, trying different settings for the past several months, and they, like the headsets I talked about in 2023, also represent still these priorities, these compromises, and these different fundamental hardware choices that manufacturers have to make when designing a headset. So let's talk about what makes these different, what they're suitable for, and what I've learned in using them. We'll start with the Bigscreen Beyond 2, because it's more than just a minor refresh of the Bigscreen Beyond 1. I think the team did address a lot of the issues that people had with the first Bigscreen Beyond. But if you're unfamiliar, this is an ultra lightweight wired PC headset. It uses two micro OLED panels with pancake lenses with a resolution of 2560 by 2560 for each eye. And at the time of release for the Bigscreen Beyond 1, that 31 pixels degree was some of the best you could get, short of going to an enterprise headset like what Vario was making. 31 pixels degree, I think, is amazing for PC VR. You can find high, you can find 35, you can kind of go even higher than that, but there's a nice sweet spot in terms of performance, especially with today's graphics cards and the amount of visual fidelity that you can get out of a 2560 by 2560 panel. They're OLED panels, so high contrast, very deep blacks, very low persistence, so while the headset runs at either 75 hertz or 90 hertz with some scaling on the display, I run at 75 hertz. It feels like a high refresh rate panel because of the low image persistence. With Bigscreen Beyond 2, they've changed the optical stack a bit. So the two main benefits are they've, one, massively reduced the amount of glare that was very noticeable in the first Bigscreen Beyond. If you're in high contrast scenes, if you're in like a theater environment, virtual theater environment, watching a video, or in a game that has a lot of a dark game with a lot of then bright scenes that pop up. The glare was very noticeable. It's not completely gone in Bigscreen Beyond 2, but would say very minimized. The field of view is also expanded. So in my testing, I was able to get about a 105-degree horizontal field of view. That's a little bit lower than their claim of 108 degrees, and I had about a 93-degree vertical field of view with, unfortunately, a binocular overlap of only about 70%, so lower than the 80 or so percent that they're claiming. But it's custom to the eye relief and to the facial interface, because this, again, also has that same custom milled light seal and face interface that you have to scan your face and have them manufacture for you. So still very highly customizable in that way. They also made it more adjustable, though, in its IPD. So you can adjust the interpupillary distance if you want to share the headset around with a tool that they include in the box. The range of supported IPDs goes from 53 to 70 millimeters, although because of the relatively wide sweet spot of these lenses in the software, you can actually tune that to 48 to 75 millimeters. And that's also one way you can increase the binocular overlap as well. My IPD is 68, but I actually run the headset at a little bit lower than that, so I have a little more binocular overlap. And for near field objects, we will see them more in convincing 3 dimensions. The weight of the headset is still very low, and that's their whole goal with this. I mean, they say that it's 110 grams, but that's without the light seal, that's without the prescription lenses, and without a head strap option. I have their audio strap aftermarket option attached on here now. All that, all in, this weighs about 315 grams. And of course, you're still using SteamVR tracking, so SteamVR base stations, tried and true with high precision that way, and also the controllers as well, Valve Index controllers in my case. They kept the price mostly the same, it's a little bit higher. This is $1,020, so pretty impressive that they were able to maintain the price, especially in today's economic and tariff times. And so I would say this is a nice improvement over the Bigscreen Beyond 1. I hesitate to say it's a upgrade worthy device. If you have the Bigscreen Beyond 1, should still be pretty happy with that. $1,000 is a lot to spend just for the reduced glare and the extra horizontal field of view. But if you were waiting and didn't want to try your hand at first-gen hardware, I think it's pretty safe to jump on this if you have base stations and controllers already from your old Valve Index or your old Vive headsets. Now, going from Bigscreen Beyond to the Somnium VR1, again, divergent paths. Micro OLED, pancake lenses versus here, larger, higher resolution QLED. So these are adjustable backlit LCDs with glass spherical lenses. We'll start with that display stack. So this is 2880 by 2880 QLED LCD panels per eye, so higher than the 2560 by 2560. And what the spherical lenses give you is not only a bright image at 210 nits, but also a really wide field of view. At my test, 120 degrees horizontal. It's lower than their 130 that they rate, and about a 100-degree vertical field of view. It's a heavy headset though, so the glass lenses account for a bunch of the weight. A lot of the extra hardware they've put out in the front here, that kind of cantilevers out in front of your eyes, also accounts for the weight. This measures in and comes in this version of the Somnium VR1, which has the hand tracking, eye tracking, and mixed reality camera pass-through at over 900 grams, about 920 grams. Still less than that 1.1 kilograms of the Pimax Crystal, but it's a very, very heavy headset. I think if you combine the Bigscreen Beyond 2 with the Quest 3S, that's just about the same weight as the Somnium VR1. But this is, again, the approach is as many features as possible. Has the SteamVR trackers, has ultra leap hand tracking, and most impressively, when I was using this, has really high quality mixed reality pass-through. These are two 12 megapixel cameras, and if you load up the Somnium VR1 tool that you use to adapt this to SteamVR or OpenXR, you can see a ton of configuration options, and that's one of the big hallmarks and features of the VR1 is that they want this to be a headset that people tune very precisely to their needs. So adjusting the IPD range here from 57 to 76. You can also tune everything from sharpening, render resolution, in just the mixed reality options. You can even adjust things like gamma, shutter for a higher fidelity mixed reality pass-through. One thing that's especially worth mentioning that you can do for mixed reality is the ability to import a mask, so that when you're playing a simulator game, a cockpit game, and you might have some dedicated, fixed accessories like a flight stick or a steering wheel, you can actually import either a chroma mask, a kind of flat 2D mask, so you just see the cutout of your play space, or you can even import 3D geometry representing your play space. So if you model up in Blender just the volume, the area that your controls are at, and they theoretically would be kind of fixed to your play space, you can, in those games, move around and actually in 3D space see that pass-through. And the pass-through quality, while not being exactly pixel perfect and relative to what objects, the sizing of the objects, relative to how they are in the virtual space in the real world, the actual visual fidelity of those that pass through is some of the best I've ever seen. I would dare even say higher quality than the video pass through of the Apple Vision Pro. Though, like I said, the actual alignment isn't perfect. The headset has also a bunch of other ways you can customize it. There are 4 programmable buttons at the top to toggle things like pass-through USB-C ports, the audio jack. This also does not have built-in audio or audio headphones. And it's kind of their approach for this is the headset to allow the power user to really suit it to and fine-tune it to their needs. Completely different approach than the ultralight, simple, and just works approach as the Bigscreen Beyond 2. So after using these as my primary PC VR headsets for the past couple months, I have a couple takeaways, things that I find are my priorities when it comes to what I'm looking for. And the first is that resolution matters to a point. And while these headsets have very different resolutions, and there are ones with higher resolutions out there, I think that spec can be very misleading. I mean, just this week we saw the Galaxy XR announced, and so many of the headlines were that it has a higher resolution display panels than the Apple Vision Pro, but I think that only tells you part of the story. You remember even with the Quest 3 that came out, that came out with a resolution for each eye of like 2000 by 2200, but the SoC on the Quest 3 were rendering most of their experiences in games at a lower render target, around 1680 by 1760, unless you're running something like Quest 3 Optimizer. And that's the same in the PC VR space. I think at a certain point, when you're above like 2.5K by 2.5K, when you're above that 30 pixels per degree angular threshold, it's really about the graphics that you're running and the render targets that you're running on your computer. Case in point, the displays here, 2880 by 2880, but I did some playing on a system that rendered this at only 80% the native resolution. And using the Somnium VR1 tool, enabling some sharpening, post-processing, it actually looked pretty good still. The Bigscreen Beyond, while having a lower display panel resolution on a higher end system and using a graphics card like a 5080 or 5090 with all that extra memory bandwidth, I was able to super sample this and run this in some games, in some instances, at 200% render scale. And you can do this a bunch of different ways. It can be a little confusing. You can open up Steam VR and you can say that, here's the resolution that the headset is rated at, and you can scale that up to 150%, I think is the default, and you can go even higher. And that super sampling reduces aliasing. It makes objects, not necessarily the ones that are up close, look sharper, but the ones in the distance look much better, and the details look less crunchier. And that can also be confusing because you can use a first-party headset tool, like for the VR tool, and adjust resolution that way, adjust it in Steam VR, adjust it on a per-application basis in Steam VR, and then in some games also, like in Flight Simulator, adjust the render targets in that. And all of those actually compound. So I would be careful in how people tune and tweak the render targets, and just tweak it either on the first layer, meaning in like the VR tool, or just in Steam VR. But try super sampling if you have the graphical horsepower to do it. That's what I would recommend. My second takeaway is that brightness matters more than I thought or remembered. And that was really brought to light in using these side by side, because just like with when I tested the Bigscreen Beyond 1, this is around the same brightness. In most games, it's fine, but going between these headsets, the VR1's 210 nits really blew it away. And yes, you can ramp up the brightness in the Bigscreen Beyond 2. You can overclock and overdrive the display panel. You can run the fans a little faster. It's a little bit noisier, but that comes also at the cost of persistence. And images with fast movement in games become blurrier, a little more smear. I think that's acceptable if you're using this to mostly like watch cinema and you're not doing a lot of head movement and the images on screen are moving at 24 frames per second or 30 frames per second. Bumping up the brightness there totally makes sense. In game, I found that the default 100% brightness in Bigscreen Beyond, over time and direct comparison, I found it lacking. So brightness is also a tough thing to get when you're choosing between a micro OLED panel and a QLED panel and the type of lenses. Because if you're using pancake lenses, you lose so much of that brightness in the light being bounced between the polarized layers of the lenses. And this is a thing that's hard to overcome even in something like the Apple Vision Pro, where I find the brightness, even with HDR enabled and all that, is not as high as I would like it to be. My third takeaway is that maybe the biggest undervalued attribute in VR today is field of view. And I didn't really appreciate that until going between these headsets. Because yes, the field of view is increased between Bigscreen Beyond 1 and 2. This is wider horizontal field of view. It's noticeable to me. But going from 105 degrees to 123 degrees, massive night and day experiential difference, an immersion difference. Playing a fast shooter game, playing a game like Half-Life Alyx, playing a simulator game like Elite Dangerous or Star Wars Squadrons, or going into Google Earth and just flying around. Having that extra detail and just light in your periphery made the experience really way more enjoyable. And I think VR enthusiasts have maybe gotten a little complacent. I know I have a little bit, because back in the early days, we really we wanted to push for wider and wider field of view, but we've kind of accepted that somewhere between low 90s and 100 degrees is okay, or an acceptable compromise given the restrictions of hardware. But when you can go up to 120 plus, 123 degrees horizontal field of view, it is really something to behold, and something I didn't realize how much I would miss or appreciate until using this for long periods of time. Something that also I didn't feel like I appreciated is the value of pass-through. And more headsets now than 2 years ago have mixed reality built in. Quest 3, 3S, Apple Vision Pro, Bigscreen Beyond still doesn't. And the pass-through on the VR1, image quality there is some of the best I've seen in any headset, even compared to the Apple Vision Pro. But maybe it's less the need for pass-through and what pass-through represents for gaming, because I don't do a ton of sim gaming. I don't need to have my accessories, unmasked and poked through into the scene. What pass-through allows is just me not being as disconnected from the world. And when I'm in some games, I want to be immersed, or I want to be in there. But I think think of it the reverse side. I think what I want is, isolation is maybe overvalued in VR. And you don't need to be completely isolated to still be immersed. I know it's one of the great strengths of Bigscreen Beyond, having the customized facial interface and kind of keeping you in VR. And for some experiences, I do get lost in that. But that disconnect between the real world, I do miss the ability just to look at my keyboard, grab a controller, acknowledge someone else in the real world, look at a computer monitor, and that's what having pass-through cameras brings. It's also what having an easier way to remove the headset can bring. And so when Bigscreen Beyond will ship their Halo head strap, the ability to flip up the headset, that might make up for that isolation. In fact, I would go as far as say my recommendation for the Bigscreen team is maybe make the perfectly contoured and conformed face interface an optional accessory and not a defining attribute of the headset. Because as much as it is nice for the immersion, it comes at the cost of isolation. And then finally, though, because all of these do add up to, if you ask me which is the headset that I enjoyed looking at and I enjoyed the image quality of more, I would say the VR1. The image is brighter, it's wider field of view, and I felt more amazed in this headset playing those games than I did going to the Bigscreen Beyond 2. But if you were asking me which one I would recommend, it's Bigscreen Beyond 2, because I go back to what I said back in 2023. Comfort is king, and comfort to me, I know, is my highest priority. And that's not necessarily about weight. 315 grams, 920 grams. That 920 grams, it's not too far off from the 800 grams of the Apple Vision Pro with the dual knit strap, the weighted strap. It's about weight distribution. And I don't think, again, Bigscreen Beyond needs to be that light. I think it's comfortable because it's light and how much the weight is distributed and how far the weight is away from your face. I do think this can be more comfortable. I think that if you installed and used this with the Beyond X mod, with the Vive Index head strap and speakers, yes, it would weigh more, but I think that would be just as comfortable. I think there's a good balance to be had between weight and weight distribution. This is an extreme on one end. This is an extreme on the other end. And some people might have higher tolerances for this weight distribution. I think this could be massively improved by shifting some of the weight around or having a different head strap design. Which is to say, these might be things that there can be incremental improvements on, but I just don't know that the two different display and optic stacks are going to allow for any of that convergence. Because in a perfect world, you'd have the field of view of this headset with the brightness of the VR1, with the lighter weight and the more thoughtfulness put into weight distribution as the Bigscreen Beyond 2. But I just don't know if those things are compatible. It might take a breakthrough in optics to reach that middle ground, or in display technology to reach that middle ground. We all don't know what Valve is working on. We assume they're working on something. Plenty of rumors to go around. The Steam trackers and controllers are getting harder and harder to get. And so, the headset makers are relying on this technology that at this point is kind of 10 years old. We're kind of waiting with bated breath. But after using these, I get a better sense of what I think is important in PCVR. And if and when Valve does announce and put out a headset and we get a chance to evaluate it, those are the things I'll be thinking about as I use and test that. If you're still a PCVR gamer and you're looking for the best visual experience for the type of simulator games and games that you play, let me know in the comments. What are your priorities? What are the things and compromises you're willing to make and not make when choosing the next headset? Are you team micro LED? Are you team spherical lens with LCD? Are you pass-through agnostic, or does mixed reality actually matter to you? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you guys so much for watching. One of my favorite things we make in our tested store are demerit badges. These are like scout badges, but for screwing stuff up, because screwing up is not just a part of the making process, it is intrinsic to it, and we like to celebrate that. We've got 27 so far in the Supervisors bundle that you can go buy right now by clicking on the link in the description, but we also have a booster pack of some brand new patches. This is the demerit badge for burning off your eyebrow. I am proudly sewing that to all of my clothes. This is the demerit badge for having a messy workbench, which I do not get today. My workbench is super clean. And we have new octagonal patches that are, merit badges. This is the merit badge for sweeping up your shop, Congratulations, I'm so proud of you. And this, oh my God, this is great. This is the merit badge for creating a clean space on your bench. Hey, we got to take our successes where they come and meet them there. Go to the tested-store.com or adamsavage.com to buy any of these, or click on a link in the description.